Let's turn then to talk about some things going on in Orthodox Christianity. And of course, we mentioned when we were talking in the 20th century about the fall of communism and some of the things that have been that brought. The center of Orthodox Christianity, the centers of Orthodox Christianity are the patriarchates, places where with a patriarch, the Greek word for father, just like the Pope is the Latin word for father. There are 4 ancient patriarchates that are still present in Orthodox Christianity. Constantinople, Alexandria, or Constantinople, Istanbul, but they still call it Constantinople. The Orthodox Christians do. Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. Of these, Constantinople is usually regarded more highly than the others, although technically they are to be equal. We've talked about how other patriarchates have arisen, especially since the Reformation times. Moscow, there's a patriarch of Greece in Greece and Romania, and there are 8 others as well. So there are these 15 centers throughout the world. In addition to the patriarchies, there are other expressions of Orthodox leadership. There are some churches which are referred to as being autocephalous. So autocephaly. Essentially, these are churches that are not technically patriarchates, but they are self-governed. And so they have a patriarch, but they are not one of the great 15 throughout the world. Other churches are autonomous. These are churches that are relatively self-governed, but they are connected to sponsor churches. Right? And so and we'll talk about here in a minute, the Orthodox Church in America, the Russian expression, it was sponsored by Moscow. Right? And so it's separate, it kind of runs itself, but it's still connected to that sponsor church. And so we've seen, and we've talked about briefly, this spread of Orthodox Christianity. But Orthodoxy, in the late 20th into the 21st century, has faced additional challenges as well, not just spread. Just like Catholicism and Protestantism have faced challenges in Europe, so too have Orthodox Christians, because of the growing secularity. The other thing that appears to be the case of Orthodox Christianity is that it too has been on the decline. Many expressions of Orthodox Christianity are usually tied to a specific ethnic or national identity. Right? The Russian Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, the Romanian Orthodox Church. And so a lot of them have been so entrenched in European culture, and so Europe is growing more secular. Well, as they immigrate into places where they have this traditional culture, but it's within, like in the United States, American culture. And as those later generations, right, the second or third generation of immigrants, people that grow up in American culture, they're not as interested in holding on to that ethnic identity. And so Orthodox Church sometimes kind of changes, or they also will spread to other groups like Catholicism or other Protestant groups as well. And so Orthodox Christianity has been having a difficult time because of its connection with these ethnicities and nationalities. Some of that is expressed in the story of the Orthodox Church in America. The Orthodox Church in America is an extension of the Russian Orthodox Church. So there's a group called the Orthodox Church in America. It is an extension of the Russian Orthodox Church. Remember, we talked back in the 19th century, Russia had sent missionaries in the 1700s, 1800s into Alaska and then down the west coast of North America. Well, there were other Christians, of course, that immigrated into the United States from the 19th and throughout the 19th and 20th century, to the point where every national Orthodox church found expression in the United States, Greek, Romanian, etc. Armenian. And quite frequently, as the Greek Orthodox Church set up, as the Romanian Orthodox set up, they were connected to the patriarchates back in Europe. Right? And so that's where the authority was coming from, was from Europe. But the Orthodox Church in America was the Russian group. Well, in 1970, the Moscow Patriarchate, which was the sponsor church of the Orthodox Church in America, decided to give it autonomy. Right? You're still kind of connected to us, but you have your own identity. They also tried to make them autocephalous, meaning that they would be completely separate and there would be a patriarch in America. Now, this was not technically something they could do under the laws, the traditions of the Orthodox Church. And so a lot of Greek and Romanian Christians, especially in the United States, were very offended by this. Because essentially the Orthodox Church in America was trying to be the Orthodox Church of America. Right? So trying to claim to be the national church of America when you have the Greek Orthodox Church, and they're kind of being left out of this decision. Right? The Russians are making this decision as well. And so it's kind of like they were trying to say this was the only legitimate Orthodox church in the United States. And so there's been a lot of changes and challenges and a lot of youth leaving Orthodox Christianity or Christianity altogether. One of the things, though, that has been interesting in the latter part of the 20th century and into the 21st century is the interest that some Protestants have in Orthodox Christianity. And there have been, over the past decade or so, conversions from Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians to becoming Orthodox Christians. Now, it's not a sizable group. There's not this en masse immigration from Protestant groups, but there have been, observers have taken note because there do seem to be a lot of people doing this. Some of the reasons people are looking at Orthodoxy and sometimes even Catholicism has to do with the liturgy of Orthodoxy, right? The style of worship. There's a great emphasis within the Orthodox Church on the mystery of experiencing God. And so that's kind of appealing to a lot of people, millennials, Generation X. The antiquity of the tradition. Right? I mean, the Orthodox Church has been around for a long, long time. And so this is appealing. Right? And so the Orthodox Church, like the Catholic Church, claims to be the original church. Right? It claims to have a historical continuity the whole way back to the apostles. Of course, there's a lot of challenges between Orthodox and Catholic over that. So that antiquity, that historical continuity. And people that prefer that lowercase c Catholic model, right? The Catholic lowercase c meaning universal. And they like that idea of this universal church, but feel that Roman Catholicism is too institutional, right? Because within Greek Orthodoxy, or within Eastern Orthodoxy, there isn't that the Pope, the cardinals, the bishops, the priests. I mean, there's still bishops and priests, but it's not the same kind of hierarchy. Now, will this make any significant impact on Orthodox Christianity? Still too soon to tell. Whether this is just a passing fad among some people to be interested in Orthodoxy, enough to change the fact that a lot of the youth leave, it's too soon to tell. But demographers suggest that although there are 200 million Orthodox Christians worldwide currently, right, within the different groups, declining birth rates among these Orthodox Christians, the specificity of the ethnicity will continue to bring that total down. Right? So Orthodox Christianity is not projected to be growing. Even though you have some influx, it's not enough to stem some of the other things that are going to be happening over the next half century. Right? There's not enough people going in, they're not having enough children, and a lot of the children are leaving. What questions do you have about Orthodox Christianity. Very quick overview as well. Let's turn then to talking about Protestantism. Again, we're talking about Protestantism, a very, very broad term. Protestantism suffering the same kind of things that Orthodox and Catholics are as well. The rise of secularism in Europe, in the United States, and so more and more people in these traditionally Christian strongholds are identifying as being not religious. And we've talked about, there's this, this tangibility of Christianity, tangentially Christian. Right? There's some Christian elements to some of these non-religious people. But in general, there's a definite decline in the number of people practicing and adhering to Christianity. What we're seeing in Europe, for example, are that many of the state churches, places like Sweden, England, right, these Protestant countries, often claim high membership numbers because you're traditionally born into that religion within those countries. But in actuality, few people really participate actively on any sort of a regular basis. So numbers that I've seen in the 21st century, like the Church of Sweden claims 85% of its members are members. 85% of the Swedish are members of the Church of Sweden, and it's about 15% that actually practice with any sort of regularity. So it's not a sizable group. In the United States and Europe, one group that particularly seems to be in decline are the mainline Protestant groups. The mainline Protestant groups are the liberal Protestants. Who are we talking about? Well, most Methodists would qualify as mainline today. Sizable group of Presbyterians, Disciples of Christ, Lutherans, many Lutherans, Episcopalians, and some Baptists. Not Southern Baptists, but there are other Baptist groups. Right? And so those are the mainline liberal types of organizations. Some Methodists, or most Methodists, Presbyterians, Disciples of Christ, many Lutherans, Episcopalians, and certain Baptist groups. They tend to have older members, very formalized traditions. Most of the mainline Protestant groups tend to be largely white. There are some African American mainline Protestant groups, but not many. Most mainline groups tend to be more ecumenical. They try to work together across denominational lines. But they're also very moderate when it comes to religious doctrine. Many of them are almost relativistic. And some of the traditions of Christianity that have been held for centuries, like the divinity of Jesus, the resurrection, you'll find mainline Protestants who will kind of reject those kind of ideas. They believe in the importance of Jesus as a teacher, would identify as Christians, but in some cases you're finding less and less orthodox positions. And so much growth in more conservative versions of Protestantism in the United States. But even that seems to be tapering off. Worldwide, though, one of the groups that appears to be growing the most significantly is Pentecostalism. That seems to be the one area where there's a lot of growth. Pentecostals are active in missions, and not that other groups aren't, but part of the reason why they're growing is their activity in missions. That experience that Pentecostals claim of the Holy Spirit, of the divine gifts, a lot of people want that, want to connect with that. Pentecostals still tend to connect more with lower classes. So some of these denominations that have been around for a while are connecting with middle and upper class people, but Pentecostalism is one that's connecting with lower classes. And particularly, it's the case that in many Pentecostal groups, there are these very charismatic leaders, people drawn to these individuals. People that are able to communicate in ways that a lot of people want to be a part of.